Hi everyone, welcome to our recitation 9. And in this recitation, we would like to practice with JavaScript programs that involve loops and arrays. This recitation is related to content on chapter 20 of the Fluency textbook. During the past recitations, we have already covered some basic usage of JavaScript in building up HTML web application. For example, we have told you how to use functions to just realize complicated computation. And also we have talked about how to use input text to insert buttons, radio buttons, and text boxes into our web application. So now during this recitation, I would like to talk about loops and arrays. Okay, so before the recitation, you'll also need to do a small task. In our files on the canvas in the recitation information folder, and you need to click the folder name Weizhi Wang. You just click the folder which is called recitation information on canvas, and you can find a folder called Weizhi Wang. And you can find the file which is called recitation 9 array basics initial.html. So you need to just download this HTML file to your local computer, and then you need to remember where you download this file. For most cases, the default downloading path will be user downloads, and also we need to just change back to our Visual Studio Code and click File, click Open Folder, and then you need to choose the folder which contains the downloaded HTML code on the array basics initial.html file. So now I assume that all of you have done this job, and I just double click this array basics.html file, and we have come to our initial web page. In this web page, we have provided you some basic preparation, including several functions like print array, print reverse, like find average, and find the largest index. We have provided some explanations on the usage and functionality of the functions. Like for find largest index, which means that if we give an input of array into this function, and this function will return the index of largest element in the array. And you can see that we have not complete this the right format of this function. And during this recitation, your job is to just finish the coding for this function. And also we have just created the array of names, an array with several names, including from Joy, Mary, Tom until Paul. And during this recitation, first job is to just learn the announcement or initialization method of an array. So you need a keyword which is var, and after var is the array name and equal, and another keyword new, and the keyword array. And within the array, you can just write a sequence of inputs. The input can be number or string, or even just a character. And between each element within our array, you need to just add a comma as a separation. Okay, so this is the initialization of our array. Now you can just stop and just use the first method to create a new array. For example, we can have var sections equal to new array. First is 17, and the second element of this array is 19. Okay, and with a semicolon as the end. So you can just use this method to create an array. And also we have a second method. We have second method of create an array of 2-digit integers. So now we can see the format of the array creation is var and then the array name equal new array. And within the pair of brackets, what you add here should be the length of this array rather than the value of the elements of the array. So for example, for the code of line 39, the functionality of this line of code is to just initialize an array, a new array with 10 elements. Okay, so right here, the input to this is just the length of this or the number of elements of this array. And because right now we have just created an array with 10 elements, but we don't give the initialize the value for each element within our array. And we need to use a loop to initialize each element, each value for each element in our array. So we need to use the for loop. So I can just give a brief introduction for the for loop structure. So the for loop structure will be like this. First is the keyword for, and after keyword, we should have a pair of brackets. And within the pair of brackets, we should have 3 components. First is the index. Okay. For most cases, we can use index I. I represents for the index. And for most cases, I will start at 0. And this is the first component of the for loop. And second component should be the ending condition of this loop, which means that if I is not smaller than 10, and we should end this loop. So this is the second component. So for second component, we should add the ending condition. Okay. Sorry, I just give an explanation for this. And so the first component is the initialization of index, and the second component is the ending condition, and third component is the operation to index array iteration. Okay. For example, I++ means that when we run this loop, every time we just add 1 to the index, which is I++. And also you can just make it as I equal to, I can just write I plus I equal to I plus 1. This one is the same as I++. Okay. You can just write it as I equal to I plus 1 or I++. And sometimes if we use the interval of 2, which means that in every run of this loop, we just add 2 to our index. We can just write like I equal to I plus 2. Okay. So now we can just add the real code for our loop, which means that every time we run this loop, and we will execute the code within this loop. And for this loop, the operation code is rand equal to mass.flow mass.random times 90 plus 10. I can just give you a brief explanation of this. So mass.random is a built-in function of JavaScript, and the mass.random will just return the value which is from 0 to 1. And if we use 0 to 1 times 90, and we will get a random number which is between 0 to 90, right? 90, right? And if we use this times, oh, sorry, plus 10, and we will get a random number which is between 10 and 99, okay? Oh, sorry, we will have a number which is from, it should be from 0 to 1, but it will not include 1. And we will have 0 to 90, but it will not include 90. And so this should be 100. And after that, because we use the mass.flow function, so mass.flow function is like this. For example, if we have a number which is 99.5, and the closest integer to 99.5 and is 99 and 100, and we will choose the smallest integer which is closest to this number, and we will choose 99. So this is the mass.flow function. So the functionality of mass.flow function is to choose the smallest integer which is closest to the number. Okay. So this is and after that we will get a random number which we call rand, and this is between 10 to 99, and we just assign the random number to our array, and because I is the index, and we will just assign the random number to the i's. So this function this line is just assign rand to i's element of our array, and our array is called books, right? Okay, so this is, and you need to just remember that every time when we just iterate for our array, we will start at 0, and we will end at array length -1. Okay, which means that array name 9 n-1 is the last element of the array. Okay, so this is our iteration method. Okay, so now we can just run this file to just give a quick test of our function. And I will just I need to remind you that because every time we call the mass.random function, and it will return a random number. So every time, so for each element within this array called books, the value for each element will be different because we use the mass.random. It will just return some random value. Okay, so right now it just print something. And I think we can, yeah, sure. We can just use alert to present our results. Yeah, so right now you can see the first random number is 45, which means that the first element within the books array is 45, and the next is 67. Okay, so this is the second method of creating an array of two-digit integers. Okay, so this is the first part. I just teach you two methods of creating an array. Okay. So for the second part, what we need to do is to complete the functions, the four functions, including print array, print reverse, find average, and find largest index. And we also need to just call and use the above functions. So for the first functions is print array, which means that we should just print each value within our array. Okay, because we want to just print every element within the array. So we need also use the loop, which is for y equal to 0 and I is smaller than 8 or less. Okay, I plus plus. So what I need to just remind you is that because sometimes we don't know the length of the input array A, so we need to use 8 or less rather than 10, because 10 is some value you just set before, and when you just call this function, we will deal with many inputs. Some of them will have a length of 10, but some of them will not have length of 10, maybe a length of 20. So you cannot use 10 right here. You need to use 8 or less, which means that what we want to deal with is just the input called A, rather than some specific or a form setting array. Okay. And right now we need to just use document.write. And within document.write, we can just make it as AI. AI is the i's value of this array. Okay. And after the array, we can just add some space between each value. Okay. And also after we just print all the elements within our array, we can just add a break line. Okay. So this is the first function, which is print array. And right here, we would like to call print array with books and argument. So the calling for the print array function will be pretty easy, because we have already created two arrays, books and names. So we can just call the print array functions twice. So first it should be just the print array, and the input or argument to this function is books. And second should be print array, and the input or argument to this should be names. Okay, so we can just come back to test. So you can see right here we have already print each element, every element in the first array called books, and these are some integers. And for the second array called names, we have already print every element within it. It is a sequence of names. Okay, so we would like to just modify the second function, and the second function is called print reverse. So we would just like to print the array values in reverse order. So how to just print the values in reverse order? Actually, it is very easy. So if in the normal order, it will just start at 0 to the end. The end is a.length minus 1, right? And right now, we can just reverse this traversing mass way. So for example, we can just start at I equal to a.length minus 1, which means that we can start at the last element and then we just go back to the first element. So the ending should be I is larger. Okay. Ending should be I is larger or equal to 0, and after that is I minus minus, which means that for each loop we just decrease the index by 1. And also within each iteration, the code should be the same. So we can just write AI plus. Sorry, I just forgot the semicolon here. Okay, so we can also just call the function, which is print reverse name books. Print reverse names. Okay, so we come back. We can see that for this time, when we traverse the books array, and it presents the reversed order, which starts from the last element 24 to the first element 92. For the names array, it is the same. Okay. So now we need to just complete the third function, find average. And for find average, it is also very easy. You can just initialize the variable, and the variable should be same. And also you can just traverse the array variable I to 0, I smaller than a.length I plus plus. And for each iteration, we can just make it sum equal to sum plus ai, which means that for each iteration, we just add each value to our variable called sum, and we can just make it sum equal to sum over a.length, right? Or maybe we can use another variable called average as the result, and we need to return the average, right? And right here, so you can just calculate this. So if right here we just call the function, and the function name is find average, right? And the inputs should be find average, the input should be books, right? Because the names is a sequence of strings, so we cannot compute the average value for a sequence of strings, right? So we just need to call the function for just once. And if we come back, we can see the average of the books in the array is 59, and we need to just modify the last function, and we can make it as we can first add we can so for this function we need to just have two variables. First is the max, and the second is so we can initialize max with the first element of this array, and we can make I equal to 0, which is the start of this array. And also we need to just loop this, and the loop method is also the same. We just traverse the array, and every time we need to just compare the max, the current value to the max we have recorded. Okay, so it should be just max. If max is smaller than AI, which means that when we just go to the i's value of this array, and we find that this value is larger than the recorded maximum value, so we can just make max equal to AI, and also we need to make I equal, sorry, we can just right here, because we have used some variable name the same, so right here we need to just make it as max index. So right here it should be max index. That should be, we need to assign I equal to max index, and also we need to return max index. Okay. So right here we need to just call this function, and I believe that the function is, oh, give me a second. So we have already called this function. So we use find largest index books, and we have largest equal to 0. So we can make it as weird. Okay. Oh, sorry. It should be, so before for this function, because we just find the largest index rather than the largest element, so we need to just call the array to get the value for the largest index. So it should be books where, and also names where. Okay, so if we just go back, we can see the largest number of books owned is 93, and Dana owns the most books. Okay, so this is a completion for four functions, and you can just learn it by yourself, and you can just try by yourself. We have already done the first two tasks, and for the third task, it is just to build up a bar graph display of books owned by each person. It is just like for the person called Joy. Called Joy have 22 books, and we use just one star represents for one book, so we will have 22 stars. And for the second person, Mary has 65 books, and we will have 65 stars to represent that Mary has 65 books. So how to do this? So for this part, what we need to do is just we need a nested loop. Our loop will just print name and a break, and then number of books for that person. And with the second level, the inside loop will just print the appropriate number of stars. Okay, so we need to use nested loop. So first we can just write the out loop, which is grab I equal to 0, I smaller than. So the name it should be uh, books, right? Books.length, which is 10, and I plus plus. And for the outlook, we need to just write the, the name, and after name we will have first is the name, right? And after name we will just add a break line, and after break line is the number of books, right? And after number of books we can leave some space. So this is the document.write content of the out loop, and we can write the inner loop, and we can make star equal to 0, and the star should be smaller than, because we just want to print the number of books, and so for each book we will have 1 star, and the number of stars should be smaller than the number of books, right? So it should be just smaller than AI. Oh, sorry, books I, and star plus plus. And for second loop, what we need to do is really easy. We just need to write a star. Okay. So we go back to test. Okay. Oh, sorry, I just forget the break line. We can also have a break line. Okay, so now I think this is the right format of the bar graph. For Joy, she has 32 books, and for each book is just a 1 star. We will have 32 stars. Okay, so this is all for this recitation, and for the recitation attendance record question, and the question is, what is the favorite season of the year for your TA? So let me repeat once again. The record attendance question is, what is your TA's favorite season in 1 year? And the answer is autumn. The answer is autumn. 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 Okay. And see you next week.